Well, here we go again.
Yep, here we are.
You got nothing planned?
Nope, not a thing.
Well, this is a surprising, though welcome turn of events.
Wait till Bubblehorn gets a load of this.
What was that?
Nothing.
Ah, alright. Alright, so the first texture effect that we're really going to talk about today is, well, pigment texture. Because if you work with watercolor paints, long enough, you're going to go beyond the three colors that I recommended to you. The phthalo blue, the quinacridone rose, and then the benzimidazolone yellow. Or if you're using a certain brand, they might be named something different, but that's what the generic name for them is. Alright, so when you venture off into colors, you're going to run into colors that have all kinds of different pigment textures and stuff. And the most pronounced one that you're going to find is probably granulation. Now, probably the most famous granulating color of all has got to be ultramarine. Now, what happens with ultramarine isn't so much that the pigment granules, kind of just are heavy or something like a lot of granulating colors. What happens with this one is that the pigment tends to clump together and then it settles into the pockets like that. So you got lots of little clumps of pigment because ultramarine is a weird color like that. And as you can see, it's already getting into its big granulation right here. Let's add a little bit more color into that. See, that looks sweet. Okay, so that's number one on your textured colors. You're going to notice a lot of granulation with ultramarine, and one of the more famous combinations with ultramarine is a little bit of burnt sienna. And ultramarine and burnt sienna are both textured colors. You're going to notice a kind of a heavy granular texture with burnt sienna too. You see, you look at that, you don't notice as much granulation with that. It's a little smoother, but once you start combining it with the ultramarine, you're going to notice some very lovely neutral effects. It's going to look a lot like stone when you mix the two of them together like this. It's going to create some kind of violet-ish textures in the in-between here. So if you get a little bit of, ultramarine back in there, you'll notice some things going on. And they're not really perfect complements or anything. A complement is a color that causes another color to neutralize when it's mixed with it. So if you mix a color and it turns gray, that means they're mixing complements. Alright, so that's what we're seeing with ultramarine and burnt sienna here. They're pretty close mixing complements. Not perfect though, so you still get that violet hue in there that's very grayish. And, besides that, there are different pigment textures that you can work with. Like, say, you got some cadmium scarlet here, okay? And cadmium scarlet, and cadmium colors in general, are very, very cloudy because they're very opaque. They have this heavy feel about them. They're very cloudy. They sometimes have some granulation to them. Not a lot, though. Not a lot. You don't see a lot of that. More than anything, cadmiums are very powdery. So when you get a opaque color like that, you're going to notice that powdery texture. Well, that just adds a little bit more variety to what you're experiencing on your palette. It makes your paintings more interesting when you use a color that has that kind of feel to it. And then you got another color, Prussian blue, which is very unpredictable. It's kind of smooth, but also it tends to flocculate maybe a little bit. Kind of like the ultramarine blue, but nowhere near as pronounced. And when you mix it with, the powdery blue there, you get some weird stuff happening, and that's pretty cool. And you can mix these colors together all day long and experience all kinds of different effects. I'm going to tell you right here, right now, that just in this video, I'm not going to be able to show you everything you can possibly do with all your colors. Just to give you a little bit of an illustration here about what a clear color with no texture looks like, let's look at one of the colors that you do have on your palette here. Let's check out quinacridone rose. And what's it going to do with the ultramarine and the Prussian blue? Well, it's going to create kind of a smooth-ish color with the Prussian blue, and then it's going to create this granular violet with the ultramarine over there. And what's going to happen with the ultramarine is it's kind of going to separate out. You know, it's going to separate out a little bit, even though it's creating that violet color. And it's going to look pretty interesting once it's all said and done. Finally, there's one more unusual color that's out there that a lot of people don't know about, but this one granulates really heavily. It's also very powdery. It's a very unusual color. I use a lot of this color cobalt green here, so when you use it, you know, you get this strange, powdery, heavily granular color that people will often recoil away from because, you know, this is a beast of a color to try and handle. It's a very weird one. So if you're not used to handling something like this, and, well, maybe you're not interested in something that granulates so heavily, then this could be a real turnoff. What you gotta do here is just play around with the colors that you acquire over time. Now, you're not going to start off with all these different kinds of colors. I started you off with a very simple palette that doesn't really have any pigment texture. They're all pretty flat colors all by themselves, but gradually you're going to find stuff that you like, and then you're going to play around with it, and that's all you can really do. I can't show you everything right here through pigment textures. Well, now with the pigment textures out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the colors that you do have. Hopefully by now. Hopefully you've gotten your benzamide azulone yellow. Hopefully you've gotten your quinacridone rose, and hopefully you've gotten your phthalo blue. Now, next thing we're going to do with pigment, or not pigment textures, but textural effects, is we're going to experiment a little bit with splattering here. And there's a few different ways you can go about splattering. You can get a brush or a toothbrush, and you can take your finger and kind of just let the bristles flick like that against the paper. And you can create these abstract splatter effects like this. And maybe you like that, maybe you don't. But there's a couple of different ways we can go about creating these kinds of effects, alright? Let's go into our quinacridone rose now. And let's just, you know, stipple the brush. Stipling is when you just make dots, like boop, 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 boop. And you can do that as much as you want, really. I mean, you can do this all day. It makes pretty big dots or small dots. It depends on the pressure you apply and also how much color you throw on there. Maybe you have a lot, maybe you have a little, I don't know. You can do it however you want. This is, like I like to say, this is your painting. Make it however you feel. Maybe that's how you want to roll right there. Maybe you want to, you know, go in there and throw some more stuff down. Maybe you want to get weird with it. I don't know. Now, the last way that we can go about creating these splatter effects like this is we can just take a really wet brush, get a really wet brush, and we're going to go into the phthalo blue now. The phthalo blue green shade that you should have. Hopefully you have it. And I'm going to get it so wet that, well, that's not wet enough. Let's see if we can get it. And, well, that's still not wet enough. We need to get it really, really wet. I mean, I thought this brush was wet. I thought it was wet. It's betraying me. Come on. Sometimes you need to give it a little tap for encouragement. There it goes. Maybe you need to do that. Maybe, yeah, you can give it a little tap. Why not? Sometimes you gotta get a little creative when your tools are not cooperating with you the way you want. And where else can we put it? Well, sometimes these things kind of just go wherever they want. You gotta be careful with a technique like this. Like maybe, yeah, maybe it goes there. Maybe it goes over yonder. Maybe I can just dump it right there. See, that's a splatter effect right there. I can just get a load of water and give it a really abrupt thrust. See, there's all different ways you can splatter your paint. You can give it a tap, you can shake the brush, you can do it all different ways like that. There aren't just multiple ways to create splatter effects, there's multiple ways to create a drip. For the drip, you can shake, you can tap, you can just dip your brush in water and wave it around and see when the water falls, any which way. And that's how you create splatter effects like this.
Hey, look over there!
What?
Aw, you missed it, Bullhorn!
Maybe next time. What happened to my paper?
I don't know what you're talking about! You haven't painted at all!
It's folded over. Nice try, though.
Rats!
The next textural effect we're going to talk about today is, well, blooms. So what I want to do for this is I want to just put down a light layer of phthalo blue right off the bat. Again, you should have some phthalo blue because I told you to go get that color before we started this entire series. At the very beginning I told you get phthalo blue, quinacridone rose, and benzimidazolone yellow, and those will do you for a long while. So here's what we do right here. We got this color right here, and there's a couple of different ways that we can do a bloom. Blooms are kind of flowery looking passages, and what happens is when you put water or some water and paint together inside what you've already done here, the excess water that goes along with that paint, or just the excess water itself, will displace what you've already done here and create a flowery looking effect. That's called a bloom. And I'll show you exactly what I mean in a second. Let me get a little bit of quinacridone rose here so I can show you what a bloom is going to look like. And it's going to look just like that'll displace the color all by itself, and this typically doesn't really look like it's doing much until it dries. Okay, you can already see the bloom sort of forming right there. And I can also clean off my brush and get a little bit of water, and then I can just add a little bit more water right there. I can add a little bit more water down here, and that'll create an additional bloom. You can already see the blooms forming down here. You can see the pigment, the blue pigment, getting displaced up in here where we did the puddle of the quinacridone rose, and you can see the pigment getting displaced where we put the clear water down right here on both sides. And the last textural effect we're really going to go over today is dry brushing. Now, for dry brushing, it helps to have like a flat brush because it's a little easier with a flat brush, but you can do dry brushing with a round brush too. And you want to get a lot of the excess water off your brush there. You want to try to get a lot of it off there because dry brushing requires pretty concentrated paint. Okay, so let's go ahead and get some phthalo blue on this. And what I might want to do here is, if you're doing like wood or something, you can go ahead and separate all these hairs so you can create kind of a more mottled effect. Now I've just turned my flat brush into a little bit more of a fan brush, right? And what I can do is I can drag my brush across that way, and I create kind of a mottled wood-like texture, and that's very useful for painting stuff like bark and whatever. Now obviously you're probably not going to paint it with phthalo blue, but you get the idea here. And it doesn't have to be like this. You can also, you know, reform those bristles, get it a little wet again, and you know, it doesn't have to be quick either. We could get, say, a little bit more of that phthalo blue color, and then just pull it like this. And you might have a weird looking texture that way. Now we've got little specks of paint on there that are kind of interesting to look at. It looks like we've got pretty concentrated color on there, and it's right on the surface. And if we get the brush even drier than we did on that second one, let's do that and do sort of the same thing that we did on the first one and split the hairs up again. You know, you can do this on all kinds of different paper. A lot of this depends on the type of brushes you have available and the type of paper you're using. Now look at this. This is much slower than what I did. Look at that. That's a fascinating texture, isn't it? It really is. What happens if I put my brush closely together like this? Ooh, we get something. Turns out there's a lot more paint on there that we could use. Isn't that interesting? See, you can do all kinds of things with just a flat brush. Imagine what else you could do. Now, just as a for instance, let me squeeze a lot of my water off my round brush here. Look how much water I'm getting off of there. A lot of water. Get a lot of the water off of there. Dip it into the paint. And I've got kind of a point on my brush. What's going to happen if I drag this brush like this? Kind of the same thing. But this might be more of a effect for some narrower passages, like maybe you've got some textures to lay down someplace, or maybe you want to do a real quick stroke like that, or like this. However you want to do it, man. There's all different kinds of ways you can apply textural strokes like that. The gist of it though is you want to try to control the amount of water that's on your brush. So if you want more texture like this, you want less water. If you want kind of a flatter type of color, you want a little bit more water and more paint. Maybe you want a light color, get some less paint and keep the brush dry, you know, etc. And also, it depends on the type of paper, you're going to use. This is a pretty smooth paper I'm using. It's got a lot of sizing on it. It's not great paper, but I do it for demonstrations like this. And hot pressed watercolor paper or cold pressed versus rough paper, those are the three big ones in watercolor paper. They're all going to appear different. And even the same varieties of the paper like cold pressed, they're going to look different and work different because of the amount of sizing that's on the paper. So you really have to play around with papers and see what you like. Cold pressed is pretty run-of-the-mill. It's pretty average. You know, rough paper is going to have a lot more texture to it, and hot pressed is going to be pretty smooth. Just a little bit of an FYI. This, I think, feels probably closest to a hot press paper, but obviously I'm still getting the effects that I do on here. Play around with stuff and see what you like best. In general, I recommend cold pressed because, you know, it's a jack of all trades type paper.
Hey, pull my finger.
I'm not doing